This episode is brought to you by Walmart. Attention fashion lovers. The Walmart Style Tour is traveling across America with a mobile pop-up showcasing the latest women's fashion trends to discover, try, and love this fall. Meet one-on-one with professional stylists for personalized tips and get a personal color analysis. Plus, enjoy free giveaways like engraved lipstick and denim totes while supplies last. Visit walmartstyletour.com to find a tour stop near you and find all the things you love today.
This episode is brought to you by the Weather Channel. What does the Weather Channel app share in common with a personal trainer and a life coach? It's an ally on your quest to wellness. What you do with its insight is up to you. Like running an extra mile when air quality is good, or checking your allergy forecast so not even ragweed can disrupt your chi. It's more than a weather app. What in the weather are you waiting for? Be a force of nature with the Weather Channel app.
The Dental Download podcast is your source for insight from conversations with fellow dentists, specialists, and leaders in the industry. With new episodes every Monday morning, I'm your host, Dr. Haley. Let's get into this week's episode. All right. Hello, everyone. We have a returning guest here. It's so fun when my friends get to be full circle with me. I had Joe on the podcast years ago, and now here we are, finished with dental school, graduating soon. So Joe, can you give people a little intro if they haven't met you before?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name's Joe Linzer, and I'm a D4 at Ohio State University and past Speaker of the House for ASDA. I'm graduating on Friday, which is super exciting.
Woohoo. Yeah, by the time this episode goes up, we'll both be doctors already, but currently at time of recording, we're still finishing school. So Joe, 4th year of dental school. I found it to be, generally speaking, very enjoyable and like moments of stress, but I found it to be less stressful than other years of dental school. What was your experience like with 4th year?
Yeah, so I would say it was enjoyable. I mean, being clinical is great. The one thing I would say is I hear some students say that it's easier than D3 year, and I don't know necessarily if I agree with that because there's so many stresses with competencies and requirements and other things like the ADEX exam, which, you know, if you're like me, I have failed different portions of it twice. We're all good now, but it takes time to be able to retake some of these sections, and some of these things in the moment are just very stressful during a high stakes year. I would call it a high stakes year.
Yeah, I get that exactly. Like there's moments that are the most high stakes than anything you've done during school, but then there's weeks or maybe even a couple months where you're just like going through the routine. You go to school, you do your work, you come home, and you don't have anything to worry about, which is kind of nice. At certain times it felt more like a job, which was very refreshing because there wasn't as much studying, at least for us. Did you guys have any academic classes during 4th year?
We had a couple, but they were they were more towards the beginning of D4 year. And we had like a practice management course, which I really liked, and other things that were just like kind of, you went at like 7:30 in the morning. And, you know, I'm not going to say the class attendance was that great, but I went quite a few times to those classes as well. But yeah, very light load for classes.
Exactly. Yeah, it was great. Do you want to talk a little bit if you have any tips for ADEX? Because when you brought it up, I was thinking about it too. I also had to retake a section. I think it's pretty common.
Yeah.
Is there anything that like looking back, you're like, oh, like I can tell that I wasn't prepared for something because of this, or did you just get unlucky in the moment? Like for me, the part I failed for endo was because like I didn't understand the requirements because I was getting help from a resident in our endo department instead of the like director who's the one that actually works with ADEX. So like she's the only one that really knows the requirements, but I was talking to some random resident and I feel as though I was a little bit misled, but I can't blame other people because I didn't seek out the director of the department because she's harder to like coordinate with and stuff. But looking back, I'm like, I should have just went to the person in charge who knows the stuff and made sure I had my things straight. So I regret that. And I try to tell people, don't skip steps. Don't be lazy when it comes to preparing. But do you have any other advice?
I think you provide some excellent advice. And I think what you're getting at too is making sure you're choosing the right faculty members and the right people to go to ask advice on, because, in dentistry, a lot of us are willing to help. And sometimes it's against our own good that like we don't know we're not actually helping sometimes. But yeah, I would say our endo faculty did a great job preparing us. We had a lecture about it. My problem with endo, I was too conservative, and I was in the right location for the access opening, but I was too conservative, not big enough. So that was just like an automatic, no, we'll see you back one more time. But out of anything to get in trouble for, I'm happy that it's that. I mean, it's not like I perfed something or something crazy happened, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a great insight. And I would say too, building on that, the dimensions that they give you on the rubrics, it's so important to go into the acceptable range. Like if you're not all the way there, like you said, if you're under reduced when it comes to the cross section, or if you're too small for your access for endo, you're done. So
Yep.
you want to make sure you get a little bit well into the acceptable, not like if it's 1 millimeter or something for reduction, you don't want to be right at 1. You want to be like 1.2, 1.3, so that with their eyes and your eyes looking at your stents or whatever it is, that you'll pass. So that's another thing I heard that I tried to keep in mind. And some of my friends that struggled was because they were trying to be spot on, and that it's too much subjectivity if you're right on the number, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
My guest today, Dr. Joe, recently graduated from the Ohio State University School of Dentistry, another dental school that uses ADEX equipment I've been talking about. Like an old friend, it's reliable, intuitive, and worth the cost, especially when there's a little help from Smart Start. Smart Start is a savings program to support first-time practice owners with 25% off retail pricing for ADEX equipment, furniture, and clinical purchases for 2 years, plus a 25% clinic discount in years 3 and 4. It also includes additional complimentary services. You can learn more about it at the link in my show notes, because opening your first practice is a big decision, but saving 25%, that's an easy one. So beyond ADEX, another thing with fourth year is looking for a job. I know in the past you were between maybe general dentistry or specializing. Can you tell us a little bit about that thought process and kind of where fourth year has led you?
Yeah, fourth year has led me to considering that I kind of like to do everything. So as of right now, I'm pursuing general dentistry, which meant I was pursuing jobs, just strictly looking into that. I'm not totally certain what I'm going to do within general dentistry as far as like, well, am I just going to join AGD, go try and pursue like a fellowship, or am I going to take a bunch of implant courses and try and become an implantologist, or, there's many options within general dentistry, or, heck, become like a business owner and start like a decent sized practice and things like that. I'm not sure where inside general dentistry I'm going to fall yet, but for the time being, building up experience, becoming an associate, and doing all that. So I have a job now that I am about to start in June, and we're going to be able to start paying down some of that student debt.
What was your job search process like? I think it's very different for everyone. So I'd love to hear like where you looked, maybe how many offices you like seriously considered, and how did you decide on the one that you're working at?
Yeah, and I totally agree that it's very different for a lot of people, and I've helped a couple other dental students through the process now too. But I think the best thing to do for anyone trying to look for a job is to do everything. I think if you only do one thing, you're not seeing the entire scope of what's out there. So for me, what that looks like is listening to what the DSOs are offering, listening to what the brokers are offering. And brokers are a fancy word for people that connect, owners of dental practices and the people that are going to work there. They're just called brokers. It's not something scary. They're great typically. And then also what you see on LinkedIn, you can use that. So there's a little bit of everything you can do. Examine all of them, apply to as many as you can, you think you fit into. But a lot of times I've seen a lot of students that they fall into, well, I just want to move to this area. So anything in this city is great, which is fine, but you're losing your ability to negotiate as well and ability to apply to multiple jobs. But I see like probably 50% of the dental students I talk to is like, this practice is in this city and that's why I'm working here.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot as well. And in certain places, the more desirable locations like a Chicago or a Los Angeles, whatever, it's very hard to find a job in
Yeah.
general as an associate, and you're generally not going to make as much money, and there's more competitive to get patients, like all those sorts of things. So you're going somewhere that's higher cost of living, and you're probably earning less than your colleagues that are working somewhere a little bit less competitive. So it's something to keep in mind. But if that's where you want to be and you're going to be happy with all those things considered, then it's great. But I think people have to realize that as well when they're going into it. And I love what you said about the negotiation ability, because a couple of my classmates did a panel about the job search process for some of the other students in the school. And we were talking about that as well, that the more you're willing to branch out, the more that you're able to negotiate, because you're probably going to have other good opportunities as well. Did you do a lot of negotiating with your job? Because I feel like I actually, as much as I'm saying all this, really didn't. Like, I changed the contract a bit, but I just could tell that it was going to be a good opportunity all around, that I didn't need like to negotiate too much. But what was your experience with that?
I would say for me, it comes down to trust, right? So I trust my employer. So I did not negotiate as much. More so, I think when I mean negotiate is looking at all the offers, right? At a certain point, you can't go in and try to change another doctor's vision of what employment looks like. But what you can do is look at another doctor and look at what their vision of employment looks like, if that makes sense. Like, for me to try and tell someone to change their contract as an employer is really kind of a weird situation, because they don't have to hire me as well. So it's easier for me to, if I'm my version of negotiating or looking at other jobs, is looking at other contracts or looking at what other people are offering, going to other offices. But so ultimately it comes down, for me, my employer, I trust him. And so I am going to, I have a 6-month trial where I am able to work. There's no provisions, there's no non-competes, there's no nothing for those first 6 months. So that's the time where we're going to work together. We're going to communicate a bunch, and we're going to see how we're both feeling at the end of the 6 months, and then go from there.
Yeah, I have similar, but it's only 3 months for my contract. But again, it comes to trust, it comes to communication. Like, my boss has clearly said, like, I want you here for years and years and years if you want to be here, kind of thing. Which is, it's cool, because that means they have a lot of trust in us the other way around. Like, they've never actually seen me work on a patient. They've seen me maybe make small talk with the patients while I'm like observing the office. But as for like clinical skills, they don't really know, but they're trusting in you too, which is, I don't know the right word for it. It's like not flattering, but it's special, because that makes you just mutually appreciate the whole situation more and want to perform well and make them proud, I guess, of their decision in picking you.
Exactly.
Is your practice like a group practice, just you and the owner? What's the kind of dynamic there?
So it's a group practice. It is, I would not call it a DSO. They have 2 practices. So it's a family practice. They have 2. And I'm one of the full-time doctors. There's quite a few part-time doctors, which is the reason why I got a job, honestly, because I was looking for a full-time position, and there's 2 doctors in their group that are going to part-time because they're having kids. So it's like nothing, they still want to work there, but they want to go part-time. And that opened up the opportunity for me to come in and help out as well. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, mine, there's two of us full-time, I guess you could say, and then two people part-time as well. So kind of similar to you that there's a mix of people, but I think it'll be good because I will be overlapping with like all the doctors at different times, and they kind of all have niched into different elements of general dentistry. So I'm hoping I'll be able to learn a lot as well, which you're always looking for with the first job.
Did you guys have do you have like a CBCT there too?
Yeah, they do a lot of airway as well as implants and surgery. So
Great.
CBCT is essential for all of that.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. I'm excited to get more exposure to those. That's one thing I feel like in dental school, I wish I would have got more exposure to like the software, examining, we did a lot of PANS, but not as much CBCT stuff.
Yeah, we didn't do much of them on our own patients. I took like an elective course about it this past semester, which was helpful, but I think it's just different when you're using it. Like they use it every single day, like almost every single patient. Like you're going to get so much more proficient when you're doing that. So the repetition, I know it'll be, super quick then once I'm actually using it all the time. But it's cool. It's a very cool patient education tool and way to try to get people as healthy as possible, which is the goal.
Oh, yeah.
So also fourth year, I want to talk about your time with Speaker of the House for ASDA. So for people that don't know, can you explain like what the Speaker of the House does, what the role is, and then maybe a little bit about why you were interested in Speaker of the House versus the other executive council positions?
Sure. I think really quick, I might just touch on what ASDA is too, just in case if there's anyone listening and they're like, what the heck is ASDA? And
yes, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Good call.
So ASDA is the American Student Dental Association. So it's an association, which means that it focuses on a couple big things for dental students. Focuses on networking, education, advocacy, standards and ethics, career development, advancing the profession, and ultimately promoting good is the best way I would say that. Our ASDA's kind of dental students' version of a union in a sort of way where we come together from all the dental schools, which we're now like around 70, but we're trending up right now. And so that's kind of what we do. And within advocacy, there's a lot of representation that goes on. And so we elect leaders at the chapter level, we elect leaders at the district level, and then we elect leaders at the national level as well. So I had the opportunity last year when I was in Seattle, since I was a past delegate, which for the national level, all that means is that I was sent on behalf of Ohio State to represent Ohio State students at the House of Delegates meeting, which is where we vote on policy issues. It's kind of like the Senate, because that's the way I like to describe it, because each dental school gets to send 2 students. So the Senate has 2 people from each state. So it's kind of like the Senate. We don't really have a House of Representatives in ASDA. So that would be where, the biggest school would get to send the most students, but that's just not how it works. So even our smaller schools, like maybe if you wanted to say like West Virginia, who has like 50 some students, I believe, they send 2 students as well. So within the House of Delegates, there's also more national roles. So Haley was in a national role as well, right? So there's many different roles at each level, truly. I decided about halfway in from, I think in 2022, maybe I was considering dabbling and maybe I'll run an election to run for Speaker of the House. And I ultimately decided I was going to run, originally because I had some encouragement. So I think that for anyone, surround yourself with friends that are going to encourage you to step outside of your comfort zone, because that was definitely an experience where I stepped out of my comfort zone and ran for Speaker of the House. So what other questions do you want me to go over? What the role is?
Yeah, I'd just be curious, like why did you think Speaker of the House versus maybe one of like Council on Advocacy or President or something? Why did you think Speaker of the House?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I liked the idea of being on the board of trustees for ASDA, which is with any association, they oftentimes are ran by a board of trustees. The ADA is also ran by a board of trustees. And so although I was not a voting member on the board of trustees, I was a member. So I got to be there, help contribute ideas, and serve as the parliamentarian, which is a fancy word for making sure our governance is going up to par. It's within legal versions of what we're supposed to be doing. So parliamentary procedure is a big word, but it's super important to the way that associations are ran, because it has to do a lot with voting oftentimes. So like, for example, on the board of trustees, when we take a vote, it has to be 51% passage for something to become, a yes or a no vote for the association. There are certain circumstances where we need something called like if you want to call it a supermajority, or really what it is a 2/3 majority. That is all housed in parliamentary procedure. And so it was my job to make sure that everything we're doing is up to par, everyone's communicating efficiently, everyone gets a voice. And then also sometimes, secret ballots are a thing. So it's my job to make sure that the ballots are actually secret, and my job to make sure that I'm the one counting the votes, and I'm the only one that knows what the votes are. And then I don't share it with anyone, and still to this day, I will not be sharing any of the votes that I've seen on anything. But yeah.
And I have to say, you did such a wonderful job at annual session. It was so cool to see you up on the stage. For people don't know, so the Speaker of the House is kind of the spokesperson running things on the stage for annual session, which is the conference where we're going and the delegates are going and voting on these issues in the national leaders.
Yeah.
So Joe was the one up front and had to be so aware of the parliamentary procedures and know when to tell people that they were maybe behaving incorrectly or get things back online. And you did such a great job. So it was so cool to see you up there, just because we've known each other for so long in dental school. So it was so full circle to see you there doing your thing. And it was very exciting, I think, as someone from the crowd, to see you.
Oh, thank you. It was quite stressful, but at a certain point, it just became a gut reaction, and where you just had to say something, and you have to be bold.
I love that. So would you say over your time with being on the board of trustees, what was that experience like, with whatever you're willing to share?
Yeah. I'm not going to share anything that isn't, kosher, but, it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. I would say I made some excellent friends from other parts of the country, which is so fun. I really enjoyed my time and got to meet some amazing people. And the biggest thing that I would say that I learned, I got to see behind the curtain. And ASDA is very strong. Like, just the association as a whole is, for being a student-ran association, it is strong. I mean, the staff is amazing. We have an amazing executive director, and it's so encouraging. And then, we also have all these new dental schools opening up. So we're in a season of growth, which all that means for us as an association is that it's going to continue to increase our numbers, increase excitement. There's just, a lot of momentum, and it's a very healthy association.
Yeah, and it's cool when you, for anybody, try to branch out from just being involved in your chapter, because that's what Joe and I started with the chapter, and then we got involved in the district, and then we got involved in nationals, and obviously you still go to some chapter events and stuff, but you get busy with your other positions and whatnot. But it's really a great experience. I would encourage people listening to try to branch out into different levels of leadership throughout the association because it's a great way to meet people and it really helps you develop as a person and a professional. And it's cool to see like how the inner workings happen, and also to make a difference and make an impact is rewarding. And, they kind of say with anything with advocacy in general, like if you're not in the room, then someone else is making decisions for you. And ASDA is very big on advocacy. So I encourage everyone to get involved if they're not.
Right. And I would say, I'm going to throw in some more gems there. Leave the place better than when you got there too. That was one of the things I thought of my entire term as speaker. It's like, okay, is this decision, is this thing, is this comment going to leave the place better than when I got here? Because it's a short term. A year is very, very short. It goes really quick. So that was my ultimate goal. And then another thing I was going to touch on that you mentioned about getting involved. I would also say that what's great about ASDA is that you're getting involved with all different types of dental students, and I think we're so sectioned off right now with all the growth of more and more organizations and associations and different subsets of student orgs that like, I understand that, people like to be in those very specific groups as well. But if you're going to do that, also try and expand out and be around everyone, a lot, I even compare it to like joining your profession, because these are going to be this is your actual professional colleagues. Everyone is included and represented by this association. So you really want to make sure you're involved in this one.
And there's a couple more things that come to my head that I would like to talk about before we wrap up this episode. So when it comes to involvement in ASDA, that's kind of the pipeline to the ADA. We're the student level of the ADA, and then we have our state dental associations. Are you staying in Ohio?
I am. Yep, staying in Ohio.
Nice. So yeah, I'll be with the Michigan Dental. He'll be with Ohio Dental Association. So I've talked to you about this a little bit in person, but I'd love to hear like, what do you think organized dentistry is going to look like for you now as a dentist?
So I'm starting to learn what the structure of the ADA and the ODA looks like, because every state and the ADA is governed differently than how ASDA is. All these associations are different. So before I can even do too much, I have to learn what the heck is going on here, because I don't understand everything yet, and it's a slow process. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, the ODA does not have a board of trustees. So then that opens up the question, okay, but who makes those decisions? And the ADA does have a board of trustees. So then that's like, okay, they clearly make these certain type of decisions. So that type of stuff is kind of where you have to first see. And then also there's some roles where it's like, okay, it's clear that this role is a volunteer position that takes maybe this amount of time, maybe let's say an hour a week, or 2 hours a week, versus there are other volunteer positions where, okay, this one is like a considerable amount of time and is potentially an election to get this role. So then it's like, okay, that's going to take maybe like more on the range of 10 hours plus a week. So that to me is the first thing I'm trying to figure out. And also just saying yes, when something comes up, or if I'm nominated for something, just say yes. Because if someone thinks that you're capable of doing that role, I don't think it's my job to step in and tell them no, like, because they're putting their trust in me. So I'm going to give my all to whatever role they want me to do. So I am I'm in the process of navigating some of that right now, where I've kind of been nominated for some roles, but I'm kind of waiting to see if they're going to vote me in or not.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. Attention fashion lovers. The Walmart Style Tour is traveling across America with a mobile pop-up showcasing the latest women's fashion trends to discover, try, and love this fall. Meet one-on-one with professional stylists for personalized tips and get a personal color analysis. Plus, enjoy free giveaways like engraved lipstick and denim totes while supplies last. Visit WalmartStyleTour.com to find a tour stop near you and find all the things you love today.
Sephora stores are everywhere you are. So just pop in when you need a brown lip to match your 90s playlist, a confidence boost before your interview, or a last-minute gift for mom's birthday. There's always a Sephora near you. Just pop in. Use our store locator to find your local Sephora or Sephora at Kohl's.
That's cool. I don't think, because I missed our state's annual session. It was like 2 weeks ago, because I was pre-booked for a trip and I couldn't go to, because they always have it like over the weekdays a little bit. It's like Thursday,
yeah.
Friday, Saturday. And I had the Thursday, Friday, I was still in school with like mandatory rotations that no one would switch with me because it was like the last days of dental school ever. So no one's going to sign up for a mandatory rotation and switch with me. So I wasn't able to go to the annual session. So I'm not fully in the loop. I need to get like retuned. Like when they send out the next like newsletter and magazine and stuff, I need to read up and see kind of what happened at annual session. But for Michigan, we have this program called LEAD, like in all caps. I don't even know what it stands for. Some kind of leadership development program that new dentists get to do. And it's through our state and fully funded and everything. And then it helps kind of be like a pipeline to become a delegate for your district and have some kind of leadership position. So usually people will do that like during their first or second year out. And I think we would apply for that in like the upcoming fall. So it gives me a little bit of time to kind of like get acclimated with being a dentist first and see like what I think I can handle. But I have a few friends that went through it. And then like the president that was with us for Detroit Mercy, he's going to do it as well. So like a lot of different people are going to be probably in the same cycle as me. So I'm excited about that it's something kind of just like pre-built to help ease us into things. And you'll be in a bunch of meetings where they explain how everything works to you and all that. So it's nice that they thought to make a program like that just makes it easier and less intimidating for people to get involved.
I think that sounds great. I wish we had something like that. I think for us, it's pretty simply like just hopefully they ask you to get involved, and you're just kind of just patiently waiting until someone appoints you to something, hopefully.
One thing I want to ask, it came to my head while we were talking, because for me, part of the reason that I keep applying for positions and keep serving in these positions is because I've had good past experiences, whether it's been personally rewarding or I've made an impact or I just had a fun time getting to be with other people. But of course, there's also been moments that you're like, okay, this is a lot of work, or wow, this person's really difficult to deal with. So just in general, do you have any advice for people that are maybe in a position and they feel like they're having a lot more of those negative experiences than positive ones, like maybe dealing with difficult people or maybe just feeling difficult balancing things? What advice would you have?
Yeah, so in my term as speaker, I've heard a lot of stories about different people having issues with other people, because we're all, whether we're dental students or whatever, we're still people that disagree, people that don't get along. And, the same goes with like patient interactions even. I've had more than a few times where I've disagreed with a patient. But the best thing you can do is really learn from the experience, still be professional, but I would say try and always take the high ground without being, without like demeaning them or like putting them down in a way. And so I've seen some really good examples of, people in some situations where they're publicly celebrating someone else, where they're publicly saying this person did a great job at their role publicly. And then privately, they come to me and they're like, this was awful. This was a bad year. But it's like they're dental students or they're there's someone else that, they were just getting through the year and, now it's over. So they didn't want to necessarily fire anyone from their roles. Right. So things like that, come up, and it is a tough spot to be in where you're trying to decide whether or not do I relieve this person of their job, or do I just hold out until the end of the year? And I think both are equally right answers in certain situations, because what if it's like a month away from someone's term ending? And I think the strength that it shows of another leader to publicly celebrate someone when they know that that is not truth, the strength of that person is insane. And I respect them, far, far more than I ever have.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think it's better in these situations to like address a conflict, or just keep your head down and ignore it? Like if you feel as though someone is not doing their job correctly or being unprofessional, do you think it's better to privately nip it right away or just bite your tongue? Because I've been in those situations, and I think years ago I bit my tongue, but now that I've grown more, I would like to tell someone to address it, but it's not easy in the moment.
Yeah, I do think you have to address it privately. Absolutely. I think that's a necessity. But I think that my one caveat to that is, unless there is something else going on, like if there's some personal conflict going on between you guys on the side, and then there's like this professional conflict, and then there's like this private thing might be making some bias into this professional conflict, then I would say have someone else do it, like so that it's not directly coming from you. But you can absolutely ask, let's say you're in a role where you're on an executive committee for an association or whatever else, you can absolutely ask your right-hand man or gal to have that conversation for you. And I think a lot of times, even what I think of is like in high school, the principal does not have the disciplinary action conversations. It's the vice principal or typically. So that's always something to keep in mind too.
That's all good insight. Thanks for sharing some of your experiences you've observed and everything. So, one thing that you've recently been working on, now that you're done with your term as Speaker of the House, is the group that you formed online. It's on Instagram. Is it also Facebook?
Yes, super small right now. We're baby size.
So what was the thought process behind that? Because there's obviously so many dental groups out there. What did you feel was missing in the dental online group space, and why did you form this one?
I have been very discouraged recently at the amount of negativity that is out on these Facebook groups. I am shocked on some of these, and I also feel like the old guard of dentistry is kind of leading the charge on those, and it's very pessimistic oftentimes, and they don't provide margin for everyone's special circumstances. So what do I mean by that? I mean, for students that maybe don't want to do a GPR or an AGD, some of these groups have no space for that. They just flat out will say, no, everyone needs to do this. You're only going to get hired if you do a GPR. You're only going to get hired if you do an AGD. And Haley and I are sitting here and we're both like, well, no, that's not exactly true. We are hired. And, I also think that every dental school is different. So some of us, and honestly, each of our educational journeys are different. So I feel confident going into practice. I have worked in very busy Medicaid offices now for a while, and know I can work to the pace that I need to work at and at the skill level that a private practice deserves and needs. So I made the group because of the negativity, and I think that there's just a lot of I feel like there needs to be some new traction on certain things, and also with a little bit of an organized dentistry perspective thrown in there. I feel like there's a lot of anti-organized dentistry that's kind of spinning around right now, and I have just been so discouraged to see it, and I think it comes from a lot of misinformation that is flowing out there, and no one and even if you try and stand up to these individuals that are spreading misinformation, you get shot down very quickly, and they have a mob of people behind them that is willing to support them. And it is kind of exactly what's going on in society in general, but it's discouraging to see it in dentistry.
Yeah, I see that too. Like if there's a post about something with ADA or something, there's 20 comments. Yeah, hate that. That's terrible. Blah, blah, blah. All this bad stuff. And then there's one person like, actually, I think it's really great. It's like that one person is just drowned out by
So
all
drowned out.
and I know that's just social media in general. Like the controversial things get way more, they show up on everyone's
Exactly.
feed, they get more eyes. The negative things get more eyes. And it's just like, it's no fun when you're scrolling and you're just like, oh, like, is this really that bad? Or should I be doing this? Or is that going to happen to me? Like it creates all this paranoia and fear in people. And that's not what we need when we're starting our careers. So I'm happy that you noticed that and are doing something about it.
Well, when I was considering this whole thing, and getting mad, obviously, I was literally at the point where I was like, I feel like I have to leave these groups because I feel like they're impacting my perspective on dentistry. The negativity impacts your perspective on the profession. So they talk about how people aren't satisfied in their careers, or they talk about how, how the ADA is shady or whatever, which no. But when they talk about stuff like that, you get panicked and you're like, oh no, dentistry is like not a good profession. And it's like, no, that's not necessarily where we're going with this. Like, I just don't like that direction for these groups. But I know they get clicks. I know they get likes. I know they have thousands and thousands of members. But at a certain point, you have to prioritize the ethics of these conversations.
So if people like what you're talking about, who can be in this group? Is it only dentists? Is it dental students? And how can they join? How do they request or reach out?
So there is a Facebook group called Dentistry for You. Like I said, we're very small, so we would take anyone that wants to join. And they can be dental students, dentists, specialists, anyone like that is welcome to join. And then also there is a Instagram channel that is on, you just look up my Instagram, you can type in my name, Joseph Linzer, it should pop up and you'll see it underneath my bio and it just says Dentistry for You. Sometimes there will be a little bit different content on each side. Like recently I posted a question about the Cybertruck. I was just kind of curious what people's thoughts were, had nothing to do with dentistry, but I can't say that I know exactly where it's going, but I can say if you're willing to experiment alongside me and willing to join a positive centered group about dentistry, then come on in.
Well, I love that. And I'm here to support you through that as you go through it. If you need any help or like, can someone else post something? Like,
yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's great. That's great.
So I think that's a good place to close out the episode this week, unless you have anything else you want to share.
I don't think so. Just excited to get into practice and start paying off some loans. And I'm always a resource for anyone that needs to reach out. Just you can always send me a message on Instagram. That's the best way to get a hold of me, I'll be honest. And I can help in any way that, is needed.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. It's been so fun and it's very full circle to have you on again. So thank you for making time for this.
Yeah, this has been great. And congrats to you too. We're both going to graduate and we're both getting out.